we want to bring back. Super. We want to bring back sort of some of those kind of that community spirit associated with that. Usually when I'm talking about things like this, I mention, I think a lot of us nowadays, we don't know our neighbours, we don't talk to people on the street and that sort of a thing. Whereas sort of the older generation, used to tell us stories about everyone knew each other and you shared things and you did hand-me-downs and you repaired things and all those kind of things. So we wanted to bring that back. And that's really what our focus is. And then we keep sort of climate change and fast fashion as a kind of an undercurrent there. So we go from the kind of community experience, older people, community spirit, blah, blah, blah. And then we say to people, and by the way, did you know that while you're doing all of this with us, we're actually tackling your textile consumption. So these kind of bullet points here just kind of summarise sort of what I was saying there. I'm not going to sort of read them all out, but just so that you obviously have a rough idea. One of our volunteers is here in the presentation. I see her, and she's been involved in the project right from the start, so I'm sure you can maybe hear from her a little bit later on. I think the most important thing about the project is that, like I've said already, we want to create a movement where local people are actually able to do something about fashion and climate change rather than just learning about it or whatever. And that's sort of why we offer the kind of different services that we do. So what is fast fashion? Again, I'm just going to go through this quite quickly because I think people here will know sort of what that is. This is some facts and info that I found from the BBC. It's from 2018, so it's a little bit out of date, but still sort of relevant enough. I like to try and find, facts and stats that are UK based, so we can try and make them a little bit more relevant, to ourselves. I didn't actually know this. So see this up here. 26.7 kilograms of clothing is sort of the consumption of new clothing per head per year, which is the highest in Europe. So I didn't know that until I was preparing for this presentation. So again, that's obviously relevant to us here in the UK. And I think this one here, 235 million items of clothing were sent to landfill in the UK last year, so that's in 2017. And when I move on to the next slide, there's a sort of stat that relates directly to that. Sorry, it's just going to be after this, but I think there's a stats around about 95% of clothing and stuff that we send to landfill can actually be reused. So that's kind of where Revolve comes in. In terms of fast fashion, just some bullet points here to cover what it is. I think what I would really like to touch on, I think people obviously know a lot about, sorry, I've jumped forward there. People know a lot about sort of the human impact of fast fashion. We talk a lot about conditions in factories, pollutions in river, all those which are really important issues. But also just it's important, I think, to make the link between fast fashion and climate change. So, greenhouse gases that are emitted during clothing production, manufacture, transportation are all directly contributing to the climate crisis. So as well as it being a sort of a human rights issue, which we know about in terms of garment workers and stuff like that, it also is a climate change issue. And it's one of the things that we can all do something about. Obviously, the more that we buy, the more demand for clothing production there is, and the more these things go on. Another thing just to probably touch on, again, sort of going back to the Revolve ethos of basing our project on the stories and experiences of older people, they would tell us that they remembered, they would go shopping maybe like twice a year seasonally. And now I think we all know that, some, I won't obviously mention brands and stuff like that, but some brands are putting new stock or new seasons into their shops nearly it often is like once a week. So fashion now has like 52 mini seasons as opposed to your kind of two annual seasons that they would have had before. And obviously that means more buying and more consumption. So again, this is just some stats from Fashion Revolution. If people are interested in any of these, you can always contact me and I can pass any of these on to you. But just this one here is the one that I was talking about. 95% of discarded clothing can either be recycled or upcycled. I think that's a shocking statistic that we're blatantly throwing away stuff that can be reused and repurposed. And that's sort of where Revolve comes in, saying, rather than just being shocked about it, what can we actually do to tackle that and sort of get people thinking differently? It's all about behaviour change, isn't it? So I think one thing that I sort of picked up on while I've been working in Revolve is that people will change their behaviour if there's maybe something in it for them as well as something in it for the community. So if you get a feel good factor about doing something good, that's great and we all like that, but we're more likely to change our behaviour if there's something in it for us. So through all the activities that we offer, we try to say, well, there's actually a personal benefit for you if you swap your clothes or you come to a workshop or whatever. I'll tell you a little bit about that shortly. Again, just some information here about sort of the life cycle of a t-shirt. I did have a video here, but I took it out because I was just conscious of time. But again, if anyone wants any of this information or whatever, then you can just give me a shout and I can pass that on to you. One thing that's just worth mentioning really quickly is that every single stage a t-shirt's life cycle, so from the point of cotton being grown all the way around here to like you owning it, there's sort of greenhouse gas emissions given off at virtually every stage in the production of a cotton t-shirt, and obviously we can apply that to kind of any, you can put any item of clothing in the middle of the circle here, and the story is the same. So that's sort of why fast fashion in the climate crisis, so that's why fast fashion is contributing so greatly to the climate crisis. The only thing that I would say here, I'm sure we've all heard the statistic that fashion is responsible for between 8% or 10%, 8% to 10% of global carbon emissions. I've purposely avoided saying that here because that actually is disputed, and we don't want to obviously give out information that's not 100% accurate. So although we don't know, we can't be sure for definite sort of what percentage of carbon emissions the fast fashion industry is responsible for, we do know it still is an issue, and we do know that it is something that we can do something about as an individual. So just, I thought that was an important thing to mention. Okay, so that was a sort of brief overview of the problem, and how does Revolve help to solve it? So we sort of 4 main branches of things that we do. We run swap shops, we run eco haberdasheries, we run workshops, and we're involved in community partnerships and education. I'll briefly go over how all these things work, and then at the end I'll have our contact details, so if people want to get involved in any of those things, which we would love it if you would, then there'll be information there on how you can do that. Okay, so the first thing is our swap shops. We have 3, one in Rutherglen, one in Cambuslang, and one in Hamilton. Permanent swap shops, I know like sort of swishing and all that is becoming a more popular thing, but we do believe that there's not many, there are a few, but there are not many sort of permanent swap shops in Scotland, sort of like the ones that we offer. So we think that's something that maybe sets us apart a little bit from other organisations, which we're quite proud of. One thing we try to do purposely is to make the shops look appealing and attractive. So one of my colleagues said once before that the aim is to have like a boutique feel without the boutique price tag, to sort of try and address the stigma around second-hand clothing and using charity shops. Although I think a lot of people here will probably agree that is becoming less of a problem now. I think people are more into shopping secondhand and thrifting and all that sort of a thing. But yeah, we do like to make things look appealing so that people want to use the service. So why do we do it? So I think everyone who is here tonight probably can relate to one of these 3 bullet points. We all either have something that we don't wear, that we don't like, that doesn't fit us. And we think, well, rather than all those things sitting there in your wardrobe and doing nothing, it's better for someone else to get use out of them and for you to actually have something that you love or you want to wear instead. Swapping instead of buying new saves you money, and that's what I was talking about earlier on when I said about everything we do, we try to have like a personal benefit for the service user. So someone coming into our shops gets new to you clothing, they don't have to pay anything for it, they get to give us things that sort of cluttering up their wardrobes, so it's a win-win for everybody. Something just to point out, even your clothing that you think that you can't be worn or recycled, that can be recycled at other sort of charity shops, clothing drop-off points and things like that. But one issue that sort of we've had, and I think you might be familiar with a few other charity shops and things having the same issue, is just the volume of, I don't want to say rubbish, but the volume of things that charity shops get that are sort of no longer suitable And this has become an issue in itself. It's probably a discussion for sort of a different time. But again, that just, it ties back into just the wider issue of overconsumption, and just we're buying so many things that even charity shops and secondhand clothing, secondhand stores now are struggling to cope with the volume of clothing which they're receiving. So the whole model that we have with swapping is just keeping things in circulation all of the time, and hopefully encouraging people to sort of swap before they buy new. And shortly, I'll tell you a little bit about our eco haberdasheries, which have recently launched in some of our shops as well. Our shops work on a points-based system, so it's all free, and we've got two of our lovely volunteers here modelling that for you. So you bring in the things that you don't want, you get points for it, and then they're put on a membership card, and that card then becomes your currency. And as long as you've got that card with you, you can swap for free in our shops. We've thought before about having a model in place where you could either buy or swap. But for now, we have decided not to do that, and the service is just completely free, points-based system, and that's all there is to it. Okay, secondly, we have Wee Ginty's Eco Haberdashery. This is just a new thing that we've launched recently, and it's named after one of our volunteers, Janice, who sadly died last year. But she is, or she was, I should say, part of kind of heart and soul of Revolve. There was nothing she couldn't make, mend or fix. So when we were launching the haberdashery, we thought who better to name it after than Janice. So that's why it's called Wee Ginty's. Everything in the haberdashery has either been donated to us, is second-hand, is upcycled, is repurposed, nothing there is new. And this is the only thing in the shop that's kind of for sale. So all the clothing is for swapping, but our haberdashery items are there to buy, just to sort of generate a little bit of income for the project and try and keep us sort of sustainable, and not having to sort of rely on funding all of the time. We have a whole range of things in the haberdashery, but the only thing is we can't guarantee what's going to be there, because it is all second-hand and donated. What's there one week could be different from what's there the next. So this is just a little snippet of how it looks. We have fabric, ribbons, buttons, zips, patterns, all the sort of things you would normally expect from a haberdashery, but at the fraction of the price that it would cost to buy new. We also have equipment, crochet hooks, knitting needles, sewing machines, all those types of things. So if you're a crafter, or people that are crafty, then please let them know that the Eco Haberdashery is there. The thinking behind that, obviously, is to help people make, mend and fix things without having to go to somewhere and buy new fabric. Because if you're buying new fabric, that's just the same as buying a new dress, except you're just making the dress yourself. So just finding different ways to reuse what's already there. Another way that we do this is through our workshops. At the minute, we have two different ones running. We have meet, make and mend workshops, and we have a knit and natter. We usually do like sort of more kind of bespoke upcycling classes and stuff like that, but as you can imagine, they're just started getting off the ground now after the kind of COVID pandemic and stuff like that. We're not quite back at full capacity with our workshops. On the right hand side there, you can see one that's sort of obviously from more recent times, and on the left hand side you can see one that's kind of pre-COVID. So we're hoping to get sort of back to full capacity shortly. The main thinking behind the workshops is just the same as the other areas of the project, that if people know how to mend, make, upcycle, etc., again, less likely to buy new stuff. So everything that we do is all about giving people the opportunity to learn a skill, to get something for free, all just to cut down their textile consumption. I would like to take just a wee second to mention something we're doing just now. I don't know if people in the room are familiar with Stitches for Survival. It's something that we are involved at Revolve in the run up to COP26. So Stitches for Survival is a group of craftivists, so crafty activists, and they're knitting, weaving, crocheting, stitching panels, sort of like this one that you see here, and the ones that you see here displayed in on this tree. And the aim is, we're not sure if we're definitely going to achieve it, but the aim is that once all these panels are collected together, that there'll be 1.5 miles of panel, and that's to represent the 1.5 degree climate target in the Paris Agreement. So the purpose of these panels is to send a message to negotiators at COP, that now is the time, to take climate action seriously, but also just to inspire local people to sort of take the steps they can sort of to reduce their own carbon footprint. these panels are getting knitted together into scarves, and they're going to be on display in Glasgow Green and other areas around Glasgow at the time of COP. Our volunteers, which you can all see in this sort of top picture here, have been heavily involved in this, and it's not too late for you to get involved. So if you're crafty, or if you know someone who is, and this is something that would perhaps interest you, then please let me know, or you can just check out the Stitches for Survival website, because there is still time to get involved if it's something that you would be interested in. I'm just going to sort of skip by this part just now, because I think I've said most of this. And these are just some examples of some of the things that we have made in the past at our workshops, and that we hope to teach other people that they can make too. So I want to draw attention to some of these things here. I was mentioning earlier about sort of 95% of things that we throw away can be reused in some way. It doesn't necessarily mean they could be reworn, you know, if they're ripped, torn, or etc. But it does mean that there are other things you can do with them. You can see here that denim jeans have been used to reupholster these seats. Down here we've got things made out of t-shirt yarn, jeans and stuff like that. So there's always, your clothing is a resource. There's always something else you can do with it, apart from throwing it away. And Revolve wants to give people the means sort of to learn how to do that. Another thing that we do is a community clothing bank. We're very conscious that, you know, there are some people in the community, I think this is sort of a wider thing that's discussed within sort of the fast fashion dialogue, is that, you know, we can't demonize everyone for using fast fashion all the time, because for some people that's the only option that they have. You know, it's all right to say, you know, oh, don't go to Primark, or don't go to here, or don't go to there, but for some people they don't have any other option. So what we do is that we run a community clothing bank. It works similar to the food bank. People are referred to us and they get whatever clothing they need for free. Whereas other customers, if they come into the shop, they have to have clothing to swap. People that are referred through our clothing bank system do not have to have clothing to swap, so they don't need points on their card. And we hope that way that we're sort of getting at sort of all people in the community, because there are some people who, you know, obviously for different reasons, that, you know, climate change and fashion and stuff isn't high on their agenda. But we hope that through our clothing bank system, we're also reaching those people too, and we're getting them what they need without, you know, sort of having to buy new there as well. The last thing that we do is a sort of wider community partnerships and education. We can organise bespoke workshops for community groups, colleges, children's groups, these kind of things, pop-up swap shops, and climate change education. We do, in the past, have delivered carbon literacy education. That's something that we can do in the future too, but obviously a lot of these things are on pause just now, or just getting back off the ground because of COVID. But if anyone here is interested in working with us or partnering with us or whatever, then that's certainly something that we would be able to do. And finally, like I said, everything we do is run by volunteers. We have various opportunities for volunteering on the project, whether that's in one of our swap shops, running a workshop, coming along to events and promoting the project, or we also have a sorting space, and if people are maybe not too sure about public facing and chatting about climate change and all that, they can help us at our sorting hub to sort out our clothing donations. And that's always a good place to be, because you get sort of the best pick of the stuff that comes in. So that was sort of Revolve in a nutshell, and sort of why we do what we do. I don't know if anyone has a question for me. Our contact details are on there, and like I say, if anyone is interested in working with us or collaborating with us or whatever, then please don't hesitate to get in touch.